Hey, Steve Gamache here with another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review, and we are looking at the Shin Saku Aogami or blue number 2 Funayuki 180mm knife. This line of knives, as mentioned, has a core steel of Aogami or blue paper number 2 high carbon reactive steel from Hitachi, and the heat treat's approximate because these are done by hand and by eye, but around 60, 61, 62. The construction is a reactive soft iron cladding on either side of that core steel for a 3-layer sandwich, and then they put a blacksmith or kudauchi finish on top of that, the cladding, and then they also coat the entire blade with a food-safe lacquer out of the box. So you could remove that with some acetone if you wanted to do that, or let it wear naturally. I will say that the acetone the lacquer extends down to the edge, so it kind of hides the sharpness of the edge. I would suggest you sharpen these out of the box, and you can get them nice and sharp. The steel takes a screaming edge, and really was nice on the stones, but I'd suggest putting an edge on them out of the box. Let's see, the weight on these, and the weights and dimensions are going to vary from knife to knife because they're all handmade. So this particular one's 147 grams or 5.2 ounces. The edge length on this one's about 183 millimeters, tip to chin, or about 7 inches, 7.2 inches. Overall length around 12.9 inches. These vary quite a bit in the spine thickness. This particular one is a fairly thick spine. It's about 4.9 millimeters, kind of above the back of the chin of the blade, but that thins out pretty quick. I'd say 2.5-ish or so, maybe 2.5 millimeters, and then thins down with the grind towards the tip. These are stout, stiff blades. They've got a nice stiff, confident feel to them. Not much flex. The blade height on this one is about 51 millimeters, so pretty tall, as is generally this style. The handle's nothing special, but it's nicely done. It's got a D-shaped hoe wood with buffalo horn ferrule, which is a nice upgrade from some of the plastic resin ferrules you see on the lower price point knives. The slight gap, or I should say jump, between the wood and the ferrule, but you could easily sand that down if you wanted to. I would suggest you seal these up with some kind of beeswax or epoxy or something to keep water out of there. Sometimes there's gaps on the handle install. The finish on these is pretty cool. It's definitely hand hammered, and it's got a little bit of a texture to the finish, some hammering marks. It's pretty interesting, kind of a muted, kind of rustic hammered style. The knife does have, which is pretty cool, hand chiseled kanji on the right side of the blade and embossed kanji on the left side of the blade. You can easily see the core steel peeking through at the edge. And again, these are shiny because of the lacquer finish. They'll probably have more of a matte finish when you take the lacquer off or if it starts wearing off. And the characteristic of these makers, they do tend to blunt the tips on these. So if you wanted a pointy tip and you like working that way, I would suggest taking the last 2-3 inches, maybe 2.5 inches of the spine and grind that down, keeping the shape, and just work that down towards the edge. And once you meet the edge, clean up the edge a little bit, and you've got a nice pointy tip on there. Don't try to take the edge up, take the spine down, keeping that curved shape. Wouldn't be that hard to do with this knife. Balance point on this is pretty much right on the money for me for a pinch grip, so real nimble feeling knife. And let's look at it on our cutting board. This makes a nice knife with lots of clearance. These are pretty neat knives, actually. I like these. I've got 5 of them in right now. They vary a little bit from knife to knife, but they're not like super skinny at the edge, but this is pretty thin at the edge, so the performance really is pretty darn good on it. The tip, again, you could point the tip if you wanted, as I mentioned, if you wanted a little more performance out of the tip, but the overall grind's pretty cool on these, and they are 50-50 ground. A lot of Funayukis are single bevel traditional style. These are double bevel style, while retaining the blade shape. So here's your profile. And this one has a little more belly towards the tip. These can vary a little bit from knife to knife, but this one has a bit of a flat spot towards the rear, which is pretty cool. Kind of flows in a little bit of a flat spot. And you're not generally going to take these too high. This particular one's got slightly more belly than some of them, so I can get fairly high, but your sample could be a little different. So I wouldn't say this is a tall rocker, but for normal size stuff, especially shorter stuff, it's got a pretty nice rock to it, and it's got a little bit of a flat spot towards the back, so a pretty versatile profile. Tips don't get super skinny, but like I said, the performance is pretty good on these. They're reasonably thin at the edge, and pretty cool knives, actually. Interesting, kind of fun style of knife. So here you have the Shin Saku, Aogami, our blue paper number 2, Funayuki 1 80mm knife.